Now it's time for another Board Game Brawl preview with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey people, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Dice Throne, and it's from Mind Bottling Games. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page. There will be a link up in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath the video. Those links will take you to the page. You can find out more information than I could possibly tell you here, and hopefully you'll consider backing the project. Now, Dice Throne is a competitive game where you and the other players take control of fantasy heroes who are trying to eliminate the other players by knocking their hit points down to 0. But the way that you're going to do this is through dice rolls, very resourcefully using your cards, upgrading your heroes, and so on and so forth. Let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype version of the game, so do bear that in mind. Some of the things that you see here may change in the final version. You can find out more about that on the Kickstarter page. Then we're going to come back, we'll discuss it further. Dice Throne is a competitive game for 2 to 4 players. Each player takes control of a fantasy hero, each with its own unique powers and strategies. The goal is to reduce your opponent's life points to 0. Every player chooses a hero they want to play as. Pictured here is the Moon Elf, the Pyromancer, the Barbarian, and the Shadow Thief. The final version of the game will also have the Paladin and the Monk. Each hero has several components that are specifically for them. A deck of cards, from which you'll shuffle and draw 4 cards at the start of the game, a set of dice, and a set of status effect tokens. There's also a large reminder sheet for each hero to remember which status effects they'll be inflicting and what they do. The final unique component is a large hero board. This lists all the abilities the heroes have access to from the beginning of the game. Lastly, every hero gets a life meter, which starts at 50, and a card point meter, which starts at 1. The players will randomly choose someone to go first. On each turn, the active player will go through several phases in order. It should be noted first, however, that one type of card the players may start with in hand, the instant action cards, can be played at any time in any phase to either gain life, remove statuses, and more. Other cards can only be played in particular phases. The first phase is Upkeep, where the active player will have to be affected by any negative status effects that specifically happen now, like Poison, which makes her lose a life point, or Concussion, which forces her to skip the next 2 phases. The next phase is Income, where she'll automatically gain 1 CP, followed by the Draw phase, where she simply draws 1 card from her deck. These 2 phases are skipped on the first round of the game. Next is the Main phase. The active player can take several actions, as many times as she likes, during this phase. Main phase cards can be played and discarded now and do everything from give rerolls, remove or transfer status effects, give extra CP, and more. But in order to play them, the active player must spend the CP in the top corner. Hero upgrades can also be played here by paying for them, but these are permanent and are placed on the player's hero board over the weaker versions of the ability. Some abilities have both a level 2 and level 3 version, and they must be upgraded in order. Lastly, for this phase, the active player can sell cards from her hand by placing them in the discard pile and gaining 1 CP for each one. Next is the roll phase. The active player rolls all 5 of her dice, and then may perform up to 2 more rerolls, setting aside any dice she'd like to keep each time. After the final roll, the dice are locked. She can then use them to activate 1 ability on her hero board. Each ability has a required set of numbers/symbols that must be spent on the dice to activate, including 1 ability each hero has that requires all 6s. 2 of the abilities will also require a small straight or large straight of dice, that is to say, 4 or 5 dice respectively that are in numerical order. If a player is on the receiving end of an attack from an ability, he may activate a defensive ability and make a defensive roll to avoid the attack, following the hero's unique ability. During this phase, players may also use roll phase cards by paying their cost. They can change dice, re-roll dice, etc. After this, there's another main phase, which is just like the first, and then a discard phase where the main player must sell off cards until she's down to 5 cards, if necessary. Keep playing until one player is the last one alive, and they are the winner. That's Dice Throne. Well, that's Dice Throne, and I think what sets Dice Throne apart from some of the other games that fall into this sort of overarching genre of fantasy warriors battling each other with cards are a few of the unique ways that they choose to implement the combat system here. So, for instance, it's not just that you're drawing cards and then boom, take the lightning bolt, take the fire. Instead, you have to upgrade your hero. You have to use cards that are going to inflict status effects that may only have long-term benefits for you over the period of time, and in fact may just distract your opponent. That might be your entire goal, so that you're setting up something better in the meantime. Now, how you're actually going to use those special abilities that you have in order to attack your opponents is through dice rolls and sort of a Yahtzee style system where you're rolling the dice several times, keeping the ones that you like, and then finally locking in the roll and then using those. And that's another sort of clever way. Instead of just saying, oh, I have mana, now you'd have another thing that you have to worry about and make decisions with, the dice. In addition to the card points that you have, which are just simply to use your cards. But that almost feels like, okay, it's just it's not an overbearing aspect of the game. It's really about making the best use of your abilities, including your defensive roles, which you don't want to ignore either. That's another very important aspect of the game, because ultimately it's about staying alive as long as possible. The player who's going to win the game is the one who's not just dishing out as much damage as possible, but mitigating the damage that they're taking in. So the hand management aspects of the game are also critical, because that's probably the most direct way that you're going to prevent yourself from dying, by mitigating your own dice rolls with those cards, giving yourself more life, giving yourself more card points to cast other cards that are really going to help you out. So there are a lot of things happening in the game, but it's not overwhelming at any point. Everything sort of flows into one thing to another. It all seems very intuitive, and it's a very easy game to learn. Now, having said that, there's still a lot of decisions to make in the game. There's several different ways to play the game. You can play the game with teams. You can do a simplified version for more casual gamers. You can play longer games with more life points, which means that you're going to be going through your deck more, and therefore getting a chance to really explore different strategies with the game as well. And that's not even to mention the fact that every single character in the game is very unique. You have your own unique deck, your own unique abilities, how you upgrade those abilities, and like I said during the preview, in the final version you'll have even more characters, and even more might get unlocked during the course of the campaign. Who knows? So with all these different things in mind, I think that it's a good game for casual gamers. It's a good game for more experienced gamers who want a lot of strategy and decision making. And I think that the colorful artwork, the bright fantasy theme is going to appeal to a lot of people. So if you're one of those people, if this game appeals to you, if it looks like it appeals to you, don't take my word for it. Go find out more information. Go to the official Kickstarter project page. Like I said, there's a link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath the video. Go there, find out more information, and hopefully consider backing the project. That is Dice Throne from Mind Boggling Games. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting our sponsors. Take care. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.